I once spent 40 minutes in the shower arguing with my brother about something he never actually said. He wasn't even in the country that week. But there I was, rehearsing my comeback, feeling my jaw tighten, winning an argument that existed only in my head. When I finally turned off the water, I stood there for a second, confused about why I felt exhausted. Nothing had happened. And yet my body didn't seem to know that. For most of my life, I thought this was normal. I figured everyone did this, replayed conversations, rehearsed arguments, imagined what they'd say if that coworker finally crossed the line, if that ex finally called, if that friend finally admitted what they really thought of me. I didn't think much of it. It felt like background noise, the same way a fan hums in a room until you notice it's been running the whole time. I worked at a mid-sized logistics company back then, the kind of job where you spend half your day in meetings that could have been emails. My desk was by a window that looked out onto a parking lot, which sounds depressing, but I liked it. I liked watching people walk to their cars, imagining where they were going, what kind of day they'd had. It was easier than thinking about my own. There was a woman on my team, Denise, who sat 2 desks down. We weren't close, but we were friendly in that office way, commenting on each other's coffee orders, complaining about the printer. One Tuesday, she asked me a simple question about a report I'd sent her. I don't even remember the exact words. Something like, "Hey, did you mean to leave this column blank?" Nothing about it was hostile. I know that now. But in the moment, something in my chest tightened. I heard it as a criticism. I heard it as her saying I was sloppy, that I'd missed something obvious, that maybe she'd been noticing my mistakes for a while and this was just the first time she'd said something. I answered her normally. I said something like, "Oh yeah, let me fix that," and she said, "Thanks," and went back to her screen. That was it. The whole exchange lasted maybe 8 seconds. But it didn't end there. Not for me. For the rest of the afternoon, I kept replaying it. Not the actual exchange, a version of it. In my head, Denise's question got sharper each time I revisited it. By the 3rd replay, she wasn't just asking about a column. She was implying I didn't take my job seriously. By the 5th replay, I was defending myself to her, explaining, in detail, why the blank column wasn't my fault, listing reasons she never asked for. I remember thinking, even as I was doing it, this is strange. She didn't say any of this. I'm having an argument with a person who isn't in the room, about words she never used. That night, I mentioned it to my roommate, mostly as a throwaway comment. I said, "I think I made something into a bigger deal than it was today." And she said something that stuck with me. She said, "Maybe it's not about today." I didn't understand what she meant at first. I brushed it off, made a joke, changed the subject. But it sat with me the way certain sentences do, quietly, in the back of the mind, waiting for you to be ready to actually hear them. A few weeks later, I started paying attention. Not in a clinical way, just noticing. I noticed that these imaginary conversations always followed a pattern. They happened when I was alone, driving, showering, doing dishes, anytime my hands were busy but my mind was free. And they almost always involved defending myself. Explaining myself. Proving that I wasn't what someone might think I was. I started asking myself a question I'd never really asked before: who am I actually arguing with? Because it wasn't really Denise. Denise had already moved on. She probably didn't think about that conversation again for the rest of her life. The person I was arguing with, over and over, was some older version of a moment, a teacher who once told me I didn't apply myself, a friend in middle school who stopped talking to me for reasons I never got a straight answer on, a parent who had a habit of finding fault before finding praise. Denise's question hadn't created that voice. It had just been loud enough to wake it up. That realization didn't feel dramatic when it landed. It felt more like when you're looking for your glasses and realize they're already on your face. A quiet, almost embarrassed kind of clarity. I started noticing it everywhere once I knew what to look for. A text message that took a little too long to get a reply, and I'd already have a whole imagined falling out scripted by the time my phone buzzed. A friend canceling plans, and I'd construct an entire narrative about how I'd said something wrong the last time we hung out, even though the real reason, when I finally asked, was that her car wouldn't start. I remember sitting with that for a while. How much of my inner life was spent responding to things that had never happened? How many arguments I'd won against people who never knew we were fighting? How much energy I'd spent defending a version of myself that no one but me was attacking? There's a strange kind of loneliness in that, if you think about it long enough. You're having these intense, exhausting emotional experiences, and the other person involved has no idea. They're just living their life, asking about a spreadsheet column, canceling plans because their car broke down, while you're somewhere else entirely, fighting a battle they never signed up for. I brought it up with Denise, actually, months later. Not directly, I didn't explain the whole spiral I'd gone through. I just mentioned, kind of lightly, "Hey, remember that report with the blank column?" I think I got a little defensive about that. She looked at me like she genuinely had no memory of it. "Did you?" "I don't even remember that," she said, already half focused on something else. That, honestly, told me more than any book on psychology could have. The moment that had taken up an entire afternoon of my inner life hadn't even registered in hers. It wasn't a shared event. It was something I'd built entirely on my own, out of old material, using her question as a scaffold. I started thinking about why the brain does this. Not in a technical way, just trying to make sense of it for myself. My best understanding is that it's not really about the other person at all. It's about unfinished business. Somewhere along the way, I'd learned that being caught off guard, being criticized, being seen as less than capable, was dangerous, worth defending against at all costs. So my mind started rehearsing defenses in advance, just in case. It wasn't trying to hurt me. It thought it was protecting me. It just didn't know how to tell the difference between an actual threat and an offhand comment about a spreadsheet. Once I saw it that way, I stopped being annoyed at myself for doing it. It's hard to be angry at a smoke detector for going off when you're just making toast. It's overly sensitive, sure, but it's not malicious. It's just doing its job a little too eagerly, based on old information it never got around to updating. I wish I could say I stopped doing this completely. I haven't. I still catch myself, sometimes, halfway through an imaginary conversation with someone who has no idea I'm upset with them. But now, when I notice it, I ask myself that same question. Who am I actually talking to right now? And more often than not, it's not the person in front of me. It's someone from years ago, wearing a different face. What changed isn't that the thoughts stopped coming. What changed is that I stopped assuming they were true just because they felt urgent. I started treating them more like weather, something passing through, not something that defines the day. I think about Denise sometimes, oddly enough, though we don't work together anymore. Not because of anything she did, but because of what she showed me without knowing it. That the conversations replaying in my head, the ones that felt so real, so charged, so important, they were mine. Not hers. Not anyone's but mine. I wonder how many of us are walking around holding grudges against people who never wronged us, defending ourselves against accusations that were never made, replaying arguments that exist only because some older, unhealed part of us needed somewhere to put its voice. And I wonder what would happen if, just once, instead of rehearsing the defense, we asked ourselves who we're really talking to.